Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So welcome to Face to Face. We're here I'm here sitting with Ken Dick, who is the president of Speroway, an organization out of Guelph, Ontario, and I'm just looking at a magazine article called Goodwill in a magazine out of Hamilton, Ontario called West, February 2013 by Janice Ford Spencer, and she opens the article by saying, quote, "Next to doing the right thing, the most important thing is to let people know you are doing the right thing," close quote. And I've asked Ken to join us here today just to talk a little bit about what Speroway does, about why he does what he does, and why he got involved with this kind of work in the first place. Speroway is a humanitarian organization doing food, relief, medical work around the globe. But I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about that. Thanks for joining us today, Ken.
You're welcome.
So, Ken, I asked Ken a little bit before the interview started, why he got into this kind of work. What was it that was the catalyst? And he pulled out a file. It took him a few minutes to find it, but he pulled out a file, an old brown craft file folder here with a couple of dates, some airmail paper of some letters from Juhoon. In a black and white photo that I'm looking here, I think dating back to sometime in April of 1973, and Ken tells me this was the first child that he and his wife had sponsored. And I wondered, Ken, if you could talk a little bit more about child sponsorship, and who knows, maybe that's what our conversation is going to be mostly about today, but little things making a big difference. What was this really the thing that got you going in this kind of work?
Yes, we had a friend who lived in our neighborhood who had been affiliated with this organization and got us interested in going to Massey Hall to hear the Korean children's choir. And during the performance of these kids from Korea, my wife and I fell in love with the Korean children, of course, and we took very little time in deciding that we would like to sponsor one of these children. Although the child that we sponsored was not part of the music group, we did start sponsorship at that point. And we were able to acquire little Juhoon. And she was about 5 years old. She was an orphan in an orphanage in the southern tip of Korea, in Jeju-do Island. And we received our very first photograph of Juhoon and immediately went on the refrigerator door. And at that time we had 3 children of our own, and we decided that this was good for our kids to know about the needs of other children around the world. But all of us started to get really interested in Juhoon and what her life was like and the things that she faced, obviously as an orphan, but also the fact that there was so much poverty in Korea at that time and so much need. So we started to correspond with Juhoon, and this was the beginning of a long journey as I look back. One of the major events in our lives following this was the fact that at that time I was working for Nestle Canada, and I was approached by World Vision to consider working with them as a volunteer on a committee. And we'd already decided to do the sponsorship.
And that was a sponsored child through World Vision.
World Vision,
okay.
Yep. And I told the people at World Vision that I really didn't see myself working for a charity, but I would consider looking for someone for them. They were looking for a financial
Was
person.
that because of the large amounts of money that you were making at the time, Ken, working for Nestle?
Actually, part of it was. I had just graduated with my CA degree.
Oh, okay.
And I had been in the food business for about 8 years, part owner of a company, a catering company, and Out of that, I moved on to Nestle's. And during my career there at Nestle's, in the couple of years I was there, I was looking at a career path that would take me hopefully into management level. I was working directly with the treasurer and controller. And Nestle's had a business school in Switzerland, which they send people to who always come back with big promotions. You know?
Right.
So I'm looking at time in Switzerland for me and my family, and hopefully a great career with Nestle's, a wonderful Canadian company. And when World Vision approached me, and I'm sitting there on my desk one day, and I said, give me time to think about if I can think of anybody who can help you out, I'll let you know. Well, about 9 months after that, they called again and said, we're desperate. We really need somebody to come and help us. We're growing here in Canada. So I said, well, something, as I look back on it, was very foolish. I said, you can't afford me. That was what I said.
Right.
The response was, well, look, would you at least entertain meeting with someone from the board of World Vision? I said, okay, that doesn't hurt.
Significantly a smaller organization. Today, I think about $400 million a year.
Yeah, they're over 300 million. And at this time, they were about probably around less than $4 million a year.
Less than $4 million.
Less than four, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But they needed somebody with my skills. And because I was a CA, they were just outgrowing their financial expertise that they had in the office. So I met with a board member, and I left it with him that I would take 7 days to respond. And they presented their need to me. I went home, and my wife Marlene and I talked about it and prayed about it. And within about 5 days, it would have taken us to decide that, in essence, we said, God's doing something in our lives. We said, well, what's he doing? We've never thought about this kind of thing. Why would we do this? But it became very clear to us that this is what we should do. And so I contacted them and said, when do you want me?
So that was the beginning of about 15 years at World Vision?
Yeah, it was 15 years as their CFO.
Yeah.
I had gone to the president of Nestle's and resigned and said, I'm leaving. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to work for a charity. He said, are you crazy? Well, he couldn't understand.
Yeah, sure.
I said, well, the bottom line is going to be people.
What about that trip to Switzerland?
That's right, exactly. So I said, well, the focus will be people instead of profits, basically.
Yeah.
And that really...
So Ken, you're working with Nestle today, right? Speroway works with Nestle.
Speroway still getting donations from Nestle.
And is that a connection that you brought?
No, it was not connection. I've been so far removed from Nestle's. That was back in 1975.
Oh, okay.
And I joined World Vision in the summer of 1975. Nestle's allowed me to work half days for them for 3 weeks, and half days at World Vision. I spent the mornings at Nestle, then I would go up to World Vision. They paid my salary, they covered all the costs.
That's amazing.
And let me write my own exit memo to the staff in Nestle.
It's got an edge of corporate social responsibility attached to it that you wouldn't have thought that would have been around at that point, but a little more relevant today, it seems.
But they were very gracious, once they realized I'd made this decision.
Yeah.
And so I started with World Vision at that time.
So about $4 million, about $400 million or thereabouts today. There's clearly money in child sponsorship. Do you think there's change? Do you think there's real change in child sponsorship? There's a lot of critics today about it.
Yeah.
And it clearly had an impact in your life.
I grew up on sponsorship.
Yeah. My family as well. We had a couple of kids. My wife and I still sponsor a couple children through an organization, and we. I mean, it seems like it's a good fundraising mechanism for sure, and it's clearly had an impact for your family. What are your thoughts on that?
It was the vision of Bob Pierce, the founder of World Vision, when he was there during the Korean War. He would send pictures back to his friends of children who were being orphaned through this war, and said, we need to keep these kids safe. I'm taking children off the street. They're in orphanages, but they need their support. Would you help us? And it was actually Bob Pierce who thought about this idea of, here's a picture of a child. Would you support this one child? And through that, and for the years following, for many, many years now, I have also preached the same thing. It's the face of a child that you should really look at. It's the individual child. Not to worry about the masses, because you could become overwhelmed with the mass. And I still say this to our people when we're in Central America and other places, that keep an eye open and look at the one face that you're dealing with, rather than thinking about the masses.
Well, so many people say they don't use the word paralyzed, of course, but what good is my vote going to do, or what good is my letter going to do to the government, or why should I bother getting involved? It's really not going to make a difference. And this whole idea we started out with about, this idea behind this interview is that little things do make a big difference. And so you're saying it's the face of the one, not the many.
I've always looked at the face of the child I've dealt with. And little Juhyun, if we talk about faces, my first overseas trip was to Asia. I landed in Seoul, Korea. Part of the Korean Children's Choir always stood in the airport and sang for people who came to visit. And there were a few of the choir members there singing. And the director,
as you came off the plane?
As we come off out of the exit.
Is that right?
And they had their choir singing a little songs.
Wow,
and,
pretty impressive.
And they were welcoming me as a Canadian representative of World Vision. And the director came over to me and he said, "Did you see who was here?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Just look over there." And I looked over there and there was little Juhyun. She was standing in the airport.
Wow, that's amazing.
And
I get a little shiver.
And I could not believe it. And so I went over. She was standing there. In her right hand, she had a bouquet of flowers. And in her left hand, she had a photo of me. And she presented the flowers to me.
Something. Yeah.
And I knelt down so I could be at her level. And she obviously recognized
There's something
me.
very wise about that, by the way.
Oh, that was good.
Kneeling down at her level, that's
And I
fantastic.
said, what does one do? I just arrived from the West. I'm in Asia. Here's a little girl, little Korean girl. I said, no, she's welcoming me. I did what I thought I should do. I let my heart rule. And I just put my arms around her and gave her the biggest hug. And then she stood back and bowed 3 times, which was exciting because they're not used to hugging. They're used to bowing. And I had, the whole week I was in Seoul, in Korea, I had opportunity every day to see Juhyun. I even was able to take her to the store and buy her something. It was a very exciting moment because she became a reality instead of just a picture on the refrigerator.
Right.
My kids were thrilled and, of course, jealous. Yes, was my whole family because they did not get to see her. And I've had that experience now in Guatemala and El Salvador, several places where we have sponsored different children over the years.
And are you still sponsoring children today?
We sponsor children, but through Speroway.
Through Speroway, right. So you still believe in it?
Yes, we have 2 sponsored children. I have 2 sponsored children in Haiti, and my wife has 2 sponsored children in Haiti. And we still get the pictures. Of course, it's kind of nice because we have files here at the office on the children we sponsor through Mission of Hope.
Right. Yeah, there seems to be, I teach at Humber College, and there seems to be a demographic that doesn't really resonate with this whole idea of sponsoring children. There was an article not long ago, about a year and a half ago, somebody, every now and then some investigative journalist gets on a plane and goes to find this sponsored child and said, well, hang on a second, what do you mean they don't have school uniforms? Or, and what do you mean they aren't benefiting from the actual money that I'm, sending into the organization? Because as we both know, and many know, child sponsorship really funds, as World Vision calls it, area development programs. So the money goes into a community rather than going to the individuals themselves. And so some critics have really taken that on and said, well, that's just not effective, so therefore I'm not going to support it at all. And I've certainly seen that trend developing with younger people. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, like I said, clearly it had an impact on your family in a huge way.
It's
if you look back at the dots and the connections, it's incredible.
The one thing it does from the giving side is the individual who's involved in giving is attached at the heart level instead of the head level.
Good, yeah.
Which I think is what Bob Pierce always thought of. It's if you can get connected in your heart with a child that you can correspond with, that you can receive reports about their education, and it's an individual thing. That's far better than giving to the Children's Fund, where the funds are being used all over the place and you're not sure what's being done with them.
Right.
Sponsorship, though, on the other side is very highly administrative.
Yeah, sure.
Depending on what you, as an organization, offer to sponsor. And a lot of organizations are starting to offer maybe a letter once a year, report cards once a year.
Right. Trying to shave off some of the cost.
Well, not so much. I mean, with when this started 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it was like you could write letters every month, and there were people who were doing this, and it was not too bad cost-wise. But one of the challenges for Speroway and any charity doing sponsorship is that you have sponsors who get off the back of the train and drop off. And that's one of the things. Attrition is always an issue.
With any donor,
you
I
need to
suppose.
find new sponsors
Right.
to replace those that fall off.
Yeah.
You also, if you're going to grow, need to find new sponsors to add to what you've got. World Vision in Canada, when I left, was probably about 200,000 sponsors in
Right,
Canada.
right.
They were large.
Yeah.
World Vision has over 1 million sponsored children around the world.
Is that right, eh?
But you know, the bottom line is it's a way to raise funds.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
But it's raising funds at the heart level rather than the head level. That's what I like.
I remember reading Dave Tyson's book, Generosity, and I can't remember the name of the young man at the time, or right now, I should say, but he talked about a sponsored child from Indonesia who was at a meeting that he was attending in Jakarta. And it turned out that this man who was now running the Indonesian office, which was, I don't know, 400 employees and $30 million budget, had been a sponsored child.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't deny that kind of impact, you know, whether or not the funds are actually getting to the person. Sam Nutt from War Child is a real severe critic of child sponsorship. She thinks it's a real, almost a sham in a way, like it's, you know, the...
I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Yeah.
If you're going to help a child, what better way to do it than say, I'm helping Mary or I'm helping Jose?
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than saying, hey, I'm sending my money to this
Juhoon.
Or Juhoon.
Yeah, yeah.
I know Juhoon, who would be probably close to 30, late 30s, early 40s, I guess.
That's incredible.
I would love to go to Korea.
I'm looking at a picture here that looks like she's about 5 or 6 right now, this black and white photo from the 70s. Yeah.
So
yeah.
she would be born late 60s. So that would make her close to 50 years old.
50 years old, which is remarkable.
And I'd love to bump into Juhoon and say, Juhoon, I've got your photograph in my home. I see you as a child. That's much better. I disagree with the critics of sponsorship, but I think as a charity, we need to find ways to make it cost effective. And if a sponsor will understand that they shouldn't demand a letter so often or too much for the administrative part of it. If they can live with the fact they're linked with a child, it's a wonderful way to be able to raise funds, but it's also a wonderful way for a donor to feel connected to the actual child.
Sure, yeah.
I think it still is a valid way of raising funds, but
Well, it's clearly working, and I know that I've met with some high-level people from a couple different organizations, and depending on who you talk to, some say it's growing, and others say it's on the decline. So it could be that there's this period of time that
I think where it's growing is with the charities who have perfected a way to do it effectively.
Right.
Which are your World Visions, your Compassions.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there's very few organizations that handle sponsorship well.
Yeah, I think Plan Canada also handles.
But some of them do it really well and do it effectively and cost effectively.
Yeah.
When we did our first television program at World Vision, we did a 3-hour sponsorship program in Vancouver. And we were on air opposite a Canada-Russia hockey game.
Right.
We took about 1,000.
Was Paul Henderson playing?
Maybe he was. But it could have been one of those games because that was the World Series. Yeah, the 72 series. But we only took out maybe 1,000 picture folders that we had of children who were available for sponsorship. That evening, we actually sponsored 3,000 children.
Wow.
In the 3 hours.
Wow.
3,000 people opted to because they could see the face of a child.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't care what the critics say, because if you can see a face of a child and you can say, I can help that child, it's that person that you help.
I wonder what the numbers would be like today with respect to child sponsorship, you know, like
I still think World Vision's well over 200,000.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you were to do an event like that at a hockey game.
I think it would be difficult, although the World Visions of this world are still running TV specials.
They're still doing it. Their
specials are still for World Vision, still promotes the sponsorship.
Depending on the time of day that you're watching television.
Our sponsorship at Speroway is limited and focused.
Right.
Mainly with Haitian children.
Right.
But after the earthquake, and you've got so many orphan children right
Yeah.
now, there's orphanages are packed down there.
So I want to talk about Haiti a little bit more in a second, but tell me a little bit more about Speroway. So $10-11 million a year in gift in kind. You're doing medical teams. You're doing a little child sponsorship. I know you're doing some work in Kenya, Guatemala.
Yeah, we started as a relief agency affiliated with Feed the Children in the U.S. And we started out in 2004. We opened our office here in Guelph.
Yeah.
There had been a previous activity through Feed the Children in Canada, but Speroway came in under the name FTC Canada, and we rebranded back but almost 2 years ago now.
And Speroway means to hope, does it not?
Yeah, the word sparrow is Latin for hope, and it's a way of hope for children. We're moving towards not just being a relief agency and saving lives, but also to more longer-term development. And I would like to see more done in the medical side. We have one passion that I have is the medical side, and we take teams of doctors and dentists to Central America mainly. And our largest team has been 40 Canadians, but we've taken a small team of 2 doctors and 2 dentists. So this is one of the things we like to do. And every day we get on that bus, regardless, the team is in the bus, and we have our thought for the day. And I always say to the team, remember, the face you see and the one you're treating is the one you're working with. That's the input you're having in their lives. And just
there's a lesson, I mean, to me, there's a lesson there about something that I've been focusing on a lot lately. It's just about being present, being in the moment. And so that's,
yes,
I mean,
in the moment. It's your opportunity to affect a life, basically.
Yeah.
That's that's the wonderful thing about it. And then we've moved also, and I don't want to change the subject matter, but the other passion we had was to work with First Nations kids.
Oh, okay.
And I had an opportunity to do that because I've had some exposure to the reserves up north, and I had actually my oldest daughter, who was in camping leadership for a long time, came out of that, kind of retired from it, and I said, do you still have enough energy to consider working with First Nations children? And with that, we started about 6 years ago to have a day camp up north in the reserve, where we operated 3 weeks of day camp.
The article in the Hamilton West magazine talks a little bit about that, talks about a bunk bed program that you've got.
Yep.
An amazing statistic here. So 135 million pounds of food you've distributed.
Yes,
to numerous
both worldwide.
Since 2004?
No, that's not, I don't think it's...
Here at home together with... Yeah, the article here says 135 million pounds of food. Wow, that's incredible.
Well, see, we've been here, 8 years now. So we've been doing this for 8 years. The poundage is, it's misleading in a sense.
I guess, yeah.
If you're shipping cans, you get heavy weights. If you're
Yes.
shipping bags of soup and little bits of fruit, it's a little different.
Yeah. So you deal primarily in food and hygiene products.
Hygiene, clothing. We've shipped a lot of clothing. We do get new clothing donated. Shirts, that type of thing, which are very popular in Central America.
Right.
We've had shoes donated. We've had 200,000 Crocs donated and distributed, mostly in Central America. And we'll take anything if it's useful to someone else.
Right.
As long as it has value.
Well, I've seen the product in the warehouse, and having now worked with you guys side by side, and it's some pretty amazing stuff. I think I tweeted recently. I think there was 20 or 30 skids of Orville Redenbacher popcorn out there. So, and I understand you kind of are a bit of a fan of.
I'm a popcorn freak. Yeah. I cook popcorn.
So this
a lot.
is just feeding your habit, is it?
Actually, the popcorn comes in uncooked, and a lot of what has come in recently is already popped. It's in bags, pop bags. Now, there you go. A truckload of popped popcorn is not as heavy as a truckload of cans.
No.
So the weight in itself is not always a good measure of how much you've distributed.
Right.
But in value, just last year we did almost $8 million in value of goods.
That's significant. It's something we all forget about is the local need. I know that most of the food is delivered into communities around where Speroway works in Guelph, Ontario, and a lot of it going into Hamilton. And it's the kind of thing where I was a part of a food drop recently, and around Christmas, and we were a part of a food drop, and it was, you kind of forget that this kind of hunger, this kind of poverty, it's not maybe quite as extreme as, say, Burkina Faso or Cambodia, but it's still very much part of where we're at.
Right. Statistics, the latest statistics we've heard over the last 2 or 3 years, 40,000 children go to bed hungry in the greater Toronto area every night.
That's incredible, eh?
And we delivered just last month at Christmas some food to First Nations school in downtown Toronto. We actually delivered food, and the children in that school were able to deliver those and take that food home to the parents. So we had word back that there were children who were, for the first time in many years, First Nations children living in Toronto that came to school after and said it was the first time in a few years they've had a gift or even a toy to play with.
Wow.
That they go through Christmas wondering what kind of meal they'll have at Christmas, but they never exchange gifts. And we were able to take a lot of toys down as well. But there is hunger in every place.
Everywhere. So you are a firm believer, just before I ask you a question about Haiti, you're a firm believer in little things making a big difference. And
I believe it. I always look at the face, the little faces especially. I think my first trip to Haiti, as we get into Haiti, was we were doing a crusade against tuberculosis, and little Jacques was in the Grace Children's Hospital at that time. This was many years ago. He was dying of TB, and you go onto the hospital grounds and the children run up and they don't see a white person too often. And,
the hair on the arms.
Yeah, the hair on the arms. And
or a bald person in my case,
right,
yes.
That's right. But we've seen children that didn't make it, but we've seen a lot of children that have.
So I'm going to ask you a question about Haiti and about Julian Fantino's comment in a second, because your article here talks about you. Where's the quote I'm looking at? Currently on Speroway's front burner, quote, is the recovery of Haiti, says Janice in this article, and yet Julian Fantino, the International Development Cooperation Minister, is saying maybe we spent too much time there, maybe we spent too much money, and we're not getting the results that we had hoped for. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but what I'd love for you, just in the last couple minutes here, is you told me a story quite a while ago when we, I think, first met, about being on the ground days after the earthquake a few years ago, and the phone call, I think, that you made back to your wife, and how you were just stunned by what was going on. I mean, just the story of what happened in Haiti, and how your son-in-law wound up there. I mean, if you could give us kind of a 2 or 3 minute version of that. It's a profoundly moving story, and I think it's an important one that people need to hear.
The earthquake occurred January. I was on vacation, actually. It came on the news. We didn't know for 2 days almost whether our kids were safe. My daughter and son-in-law and 4 grandchildren actually were living in Haiti at the time of the earthquake, working with Mission of Hope. The story as it evolved, that in their home, as the building shook, and they were on the 2nd floor in the complex north of Port-au-Prince, they got the family out down the back stairs, which were metal stairs actually, like the old fire escapes, and the stairs were shaking, and but they got everybody out. Pictures fell off the wall, cracks in the walls. Things were happening, obviously. Immediately, there became people started to come to the mission for help. Our son is a paramedic, and the rest of the family became involved in a rescue operation immediately.
Now, Ken, hadn't Halton also donated an ambulance?
Yes.
And this is all prior to the earthquake by a couple
in the
months?
October, prior to the earthquake, yes.
Yeah.
We had an ambulance donated to Speroway. Interesting, the approach to Halton to get an ambulance, which has come off the road, but in good shape, was really destined for El Salvador. We had been in El Salvador and saw the shape of the ambulance and decided we'd get one. It didn't work out, and then the earthquake hit. But prior to that, we made the change to Haiti because of a greater need. It was sitting on the grounds. It had no license plate. It had an Ontario plate on it. And they were waiting to get Haitian plates. When the earthquake hit, of course, nobody cared what kind of plates were on it.
Yeah.
But with Grant, our son-in-law was there. He knew the ambulance. He used to drive it in Halton. He got in the ambulance, and for days and days after that, he transferred patients, picked up patients. He was all over the place. It was the best ambulance actually in Haiti during the time following.
It's incredible. Wow.
So we said we really should do something, and we had no way to get to Haiti. And finally, we had continued to call the government. Finally, CETA came through one day. They called us back and said, if you can be in Montreal to get on a flight at 3 a.m. in the morning, tomorrow morning, we'll take you into Haiti. We're shipping food and other supplies down. It was a Transat flight. We immediately called Halton, who had offered actually to send some paramedics. And we called Halton and said, we've got a plane. We need you guys here. We got here at the warehouse. We got a bus and brought it right into our warehouse, actually. And we all got on the bus, drove to Montreal, to Dorval Airport, and we got on that plane. We were in Haiti the next morning. This was January, it was 8 days after the earthquake, actually.
Right.
We arrived in between all of the U.S. helicopters that were flying around, and they threw our bags on the tarmac and said, okay, move out of the way.
Right.
We're busy. We were bused up to Mission of Hope, and after that, we spent every day for it was about 6 or 7 days in the hospital grounds, the General Hospital grounds in downtown Port-au-Prince, working in a tent, very hot. The tent beside us were doctors from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York.
Wow, okay.
The other side were Brazilian doctors. We carried in 10,000 units of morphine.
Wow.
They were giving aspirin to patients who had lost limbs. I mean, people in pain, all they had were aspirins. And we were the most popular group.
Yeah, I guess so.
Every doctor.
Ambulance,
was asking for
doctors.
morphine.
Yeah.
And we were there for 8 days. So I'm there for a few days. All we had were satellite phones. Dr. Tony, Tony Brown, our medical advisor, was with me. We were the only two with phones. And back at the mission one night, always trying to get back and call my wife to let her know everything was okay. And finally, standing on the top of the hill, because they don't always work, we finally got through. And this is amazing for me, but then I'm a very emotional guy. Finally got through, and I found my wife. She was at my daughter's, and she answered the phone. And she said, Ken? I said, yeah. Is that you? I said, yeah. And then I couldn't speak. For probably, it seemed like a long time.
I'm sure
probably
it did.
It was just a minute or two.
Yeah.
And I couldn't speak. Even now I'm having trouble speaking.
I can tell. Yeah.
Very emotional.
Well, how could it not be?
What it was that in like almost 40 years of doing what I'm doing, I had never been in a situation where I had seen such devastation, such a mess of people, hurting people. What really tore me apart was the kids, injured kids being carried in, some without a right arm. One lady had no left arm, and she was traumatized. And we were going to take her into surgery, and she said, am I going to lose my other arm? They said, well, we don't know. And she said, well, I lost my left arm, and in my left arm at the time of the earthquake, I had my baby.
Oh boy! Wow.
And she had never. Her baby went with her arm.
What do you say?
So she lost her arm. She lost her baby. This was just an example of what was happening.
Yeah, it's just astounding.
So to be speechless for a minute and a half, I finally got my composure.
Yeah. Right.
But the comfort level that my wife had, knowing we were safe, was okay.
Yeah.
And our kids were safe.
Yeah.
God was good.
And
He had protected them.
And your daughter's family stayed on for about another 6 months with
Yeah,
you?
they were there for almost a year, actually, working
yeah.
at Mission of Hope, and they stayed on and worked until, it was about 6 or 7 months after the earthquake. And still, the ambulance is still operating. In fact, at the time of this interview right now, my daughter and son-in-law are in Haiti for a few days doing some work for Speroway.
That's an incredible story, life-changing story for a whole lot of reasons, it seems to me. Yeah. So what do you say to Minister Fantino right now? You think that what's the quote again here? Front burner for the recovery of Haiti.
If I were talking to him, I'd say I think he is making mistakes. I would say to the Premier, what is an OPP officer doing managing international development?
I think a lot of other people are asking that question.
I'm wondering why we have a policeman, trying to decide what goes on in other parts of the world and making decisions of that nature. I think he's mistaken in many ways. I know we have poured through our partners down there well over probably $2 million in the last few years into Haiti. I could take Mr. Fantino to houses that we have built in Haiti through the donors here in Canada. I could show him the schools that are being operated through donors in Canada. For him to say we need better accountability, I would say, why did you turn down our approach to CETA for money when we needed to build homes? Why are you sitting on all this money? We're ready to work with it. We've got people there building homes.
Accountability, according to whom? I mean, I think the thing that bothers me a little bit about what's going on quite a lot actually bothers me quite a lot is he's suggesting that it's Canadians that want this accountability.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, are these decisions being made based on the sanctity of human life or based on the bottom line, right? You talked earlier about the double bottom line, the people and profit, and now today it's kind of people, planet, profit, triple bottom line. And I wonder to what degree they're actually looking at it from that perspective.
Bill Clinton's foundation just gave funds to Mission of Hope to do work. So what they're seeing is the people that are making things happen are the agencies that are there working hard to make it change.
Yeah.
Fantino doesn't seem to be building any relationship that I know of with the agencies in Haiti who've been there for a number of years.
That are on the ground actually getting it
doing
done.
things.
Yeah, sleeves rolled
schools,
up.
Building homes.
Sure.
Write some checks to them. We're ready to do some more homes. Send us some money.
Right.
We're here.
Sure.
We're doing it. So I don't know where he's coming from, really. I think it's not all. I'm sure the government's shaky.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So is ours.
Yeah. So is ours in a sense.
Yes.
But I don't think it should be a political issue. It should be a hard issue. So I say to Mr. Fantino, come with me. Why don't you come on one of our medical trips and see us working with children in need? And take a look at a child's face and say to him, I'm sorry, we can't send you any more money.
And then hold a press conference.
And then say, I'm not sending money to this country.
So I'm gonna end this our interview here with a note from Juhoon, and it says here, quote, I'm very glad that I can call Lori and Karen as my elder sister and Alan as my elder brother. I will try to be a good younger sister of them. It seems to me that Alan is 1 year older than I. Today is such a joyful Christmas day. We sang Jingle Bell and Away in a Manger to the home rhythm band. I also played Korean folk games in our special program. That's just, close quote, that's just one little paragraph from Juhoon's letter to the Dick family back in 1973. Thanks, Ken, for...
Well, if anybody out there knows Juhoon or bumps into her, tell her I'm looking for her.
Well, you never know. You just might hear from her. Thanks for joining us today, Ken.
You're welcome.